In the last episode here on Pulp and Art, I covered the themes of the current run of L. Ewing's The Immortal Hulk. There's one Hulk run though that not a lot of people talk about, which I think needs a lot more attention. I might be a little biased because this Hulk run essentially made me a comic book fan, but I will also dive into why this take on the Hulk did not really set well with a lot of people. I'm of course talking about the early 2000s take on the Hulk by horror author Bruce Jones. In an interview in 2002, Bruce Jones, the horror author that at the time was mostly known for books like Tales of Terror, Flinch and Savage Sword of Conan, had the following to say when given an interview to CBR.com about his take on the Hulk. In an industry that tends to pigeonhole and stereotype, Marvel took a chance on someone who, for better or worse, was best known as a horror story and crime novelist. I tended to view me as simply a writer, character-driven, perhaps slightly darker than some, but fundamentally a writer. Starting in 2002, Jones started writing The Incredible Hulk, following authors like Peter David, who had been writing the series for a long time, and some other failed attempts after David by Joe Casey, John Byrne and Paul Jenkins, all very much not really connecting with a bigger audience. At the beginning of Jones' Hulk, it felt like the story was very much inspired by the 1970s Hulk TV show, following Bruce Banner on the run from authorities. Instead of the typical police or military, in his run it was a secret organization called Home Base, using well-trained agents to gain some of Hulk's blood for, at the start, unknown reasons. While the run had many artists involved, the first was John Romita Jr., who really defines the run for me personally. The comic book has a very dark atmosphere with some long stretches of just visual storytelling instead of a lot of exposition, and Studio F, who colored the book, gave it a very desaturated, realistic and dark look. While Jones' take was at first admired by Hulk newcomers and old fans alike, even at the start there already seemed to be some negative reviews and confusion over the course that the series was moving to. Rather than building on the nostalgia of previous runs and having Bruce Banner suffering from DID, Jones makes the Hulk more of a ticking time bomb instead. The overall pacing of the book is slow, and that's a pretty bold choice of the makers. For long stretches of the book, it's just Bruce Banner, wandering the lonely roads of America and trying to help others to atone for his sins. Especially one sin. In Bruce Jones' Hulk run, a young boy called Ricky Myers has supposedly been killed in a Hulk rampage, and since then Banner is on the run from the police and the new secret organization that hunts him, while also being not quite sure if Ricky Myers really died or if this is just another conspiracy. On his quest to find answers, he is always aided by an invincible voice, the so-called Mr. Blue, who stays in contact with him via his laptop and warns him of his hunters. The overall tone of his run is at first pretty bleak, and Jones' writing is unique. It feels very cinematic and perfect for someone who isn't really familiar with the character of Bruce Banner and the Hulk. As mentioned before, that also upset a lot of people since some of the characters don't really behave like they used to, and a lot of the story beats from previous Hulk runs feel retconned or even ignored for a different take. But since superhero comic books are a medium that always seem to shift and twist around with continuity anyway, I was always okay with that direction. Horror also comes into play early on, since the agents that the conspiracy sends don't seem to die when killed, which sets the reader and the characters in this constant state of paranoia and mistrust. You never know when someone is playing for the other side or when he's coming back from the dead, which is a very suspenseful and effective way of telling a horror story. Bruce Jones is of course also a great crime writer, and in later issues he mixes in noir elements and things like non-linear storytelling to play with our head. One story arc deals with Bruce Banner being hit by a car and a mysterious woman takes him into his apartment, while he is slowly fading in and out of a coma. When he finally wakes up, the woman is dead, leaving a pretty gruesome looking body behind, and the police are outside knocking on the door. This kind of setup for a story feels, at least in my eyes, more like a good horror thriller, which I really adore. It's almost a predecessor to what the MCU is doing with its characters, using the heroes in genre movies like Captain America, the Winter Soldier in a superhero 70s spy thriller. That way the genre itself can help invite new readers who might not even be comic book fans like myself at the time. Well, now you are probably asking yourself, but why was this not a celebrated Hulk run? Why have I not heard about it and it's not like a classic or something like that? The answer is simple and complicated at the same time. Let's make a comparison, and I think a lot of people can understand where I'm coming from. Have you ever seen Lost, the TV show? Oh yeah, now I think most people know where this is going. Bruce Jones' Hulk run, which ironically was released before Lost, kind of plays like said TV show. In that it at first raises a lot of questions and with a lot of plot twists pushes the story forward, while also creating new questions. Who is Homebase and the conspiracy? Is Ricky Myers dead? Why do these people need the Hulk blood? Who is the mysterious leader of this operation, who the audience can always just see with half his face? Well, all these questions get answers, but some of these answers are very rushed, confused and unsatisfying. Here's how I see the overall quality of this run. There are 8 chapters in this run. Volume 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6 are pretty great. Volume 5 is a departure from the conspiracy plotline and it's okay. It's nothing special. It's basically a storyline about Crusher Creel, the absorbing man, who develops new powers. I don't mind it as a sort of spin-off in an ongoing series, and I do like the horror elements of it, so it's okay. Volume 7 is alright, but it already feels like the conspiracy story has just ended, and to me there were still so many questions left that needed answers. Volume 8 is where things get really out of control, sadly. The first issue is really good. It's a small noir story with Banner, but it's a good read, and Mike Deodato's artwork in this one is especially great. And then we end our big conspiracy horror tale by Bruce Jones with a pretty underwhelming final act. First we have an Iron Man Bruce Banner team-up story which really ruins the loneliness and darker tone of previous issues in my opinion. And then everything is revealed to the reader. What was going on the whole time, and it's okay at best. The answers feel rushed, underdeveloped and nonsensical with a lot of logic holes and just flat out unanswered questions to this day. But since Jones' run at the time was not really getting a lot of love anyways, and the novelty had worn off for a lot of people, maybe this was more Marvel pulling the plug and not letting Jones write what he might have originally intended to write. I don't know. So overall this sounds like a mixed bag, right? Well, I think it's still a pretty remarkable read, especially at the start. The first 2 hardcovers especially I would describe as Breaking Bad's dry atmosphere meets a David Fincher noir movie mixed in with some gory body horror. Yes, the run becomes schlock in the middle, and yes, the ending is kind of a mess, but it's still all creative in its writing. Even the bad conclusion is in a lot of ways creatively told, even if it's not very satisfying. So how about you give Bruce Jones' Hulk a second chance? It's not perfect, but if you are in the mood for a hitchhiking trip in America's heartland with a dark secret following you around, then this is pretty perfect for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell if you want to see more videos. Until next time, stay pulpy and stay artsy. See ya!